like to call to order the council meeting Monday, November 26, 2018, 7 p.m. Opening prayer. Member Soretta, would you like to lead us?
Okay. Is there anybody else there who would like to lead in prayer this evening? Okay. We'll bow our heads. Lord, thank you for bringing us here this evening with a good body, mind, and soul. Help us to make the best decisions possible for the people in this community. We're so blessed that we have the responsibilities you've given us with this wonderful community. We pray that we get through another wonderful season, the holiday seasons, and get back to work on the beginning of the year and continue to make this community a wonderful place to live, learn, and play. Thank you for everything you've given us, and guys, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Soretta.
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Fontaine.
Here.
Kiesling. Here. Peters.
Here.
Revolt.
Here.
And Weirin. Here. 7 present, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you. For your consideration, a motion and a second to approve as presented committee of the whole meeting minutes, October 29th, and council meeting minutes, November 12th, both of 18.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you. At this time, if you wish to address council, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Larry Tripp, 11270 East Maple, North Canton. On Tuesday, November the 13th, following the council meeting of 2 weeks ago, I contacted 2 council members concerning the cancerous growth that had been in slight remission only to again return in its ugliness. Mr. Peters, during our conversation, you heard my praise of past meetings this year that you have conducted, and also my wrath of the November 12th meeting. I would be now less of a man if I did not address this issue at this time. Thus, the majority of my time will be addressed to the holder of the office of the law director. First, let me quote his remarks during the reports portion of this past meeting, and I quote, "Those that may not attend meetings as regular as some others, for those that appear and offer their opinion, you may note they are not under oath. There is no requirement that they give truthful testimony and that, etc., etc." End quote. First off, at one time there was a sheet up here at the podium where public speakers were to read in respect to public speaks decorum. The city charter, I believe, is, and maybe an ordinance as well, address public speaks decorum and also the right of the citizens to expect city employees to be professional and courteous to his citizens during public meetings. So, Mr. Fox, I walked out of the last meeting in which I spoke 2 weeks ago that you were of the opinion that I, or anyone else that may speak before council, were not being truthful. Council President, other council members, is that what you think of North Canton citizens who during public speaks voice their concerns, suggestions, and opinions? In other words, Law Director Fox, as you often speak for the City Council, I am very much of the opinion that through your remarks, you may have been insinuating that during my public speaks, I was lying, thus making me a liar. Is that correct? Is that correct? I didn't think so.
I'm following
Mr. Peters, I think he's out of line talking. Mr. Peters, I would appreciate you and other council members of the council to remind the office of the law director that while he reports directly to you, He is an employee of the North Canton, Ohio city government, and as such, each and every one of his citizens is his boss. Mr. Fox, while in the military, would you make that statement to a superior officer? Would you? I think not, and you're not going to make it to me, sir. Mr. Fox, you understand the Constitution of the United States with its First Amendment offering the citizens the right to voice their opinion. You do understand that, don't you? Huh? You do understand it. So, Mr. President, during my remaining time, I'm going to stand here and not say anything. That, in effect, says nothing, which, in my opinion, is symbolic of what North Canton has gotten from the law director's office during the past 8 years.
Continue the meeting if you wish. There's case law if you want for someone that stands and simply has empty time. If you wish, it's this way. I'll have to stop.
Sir, I'm still talking. I'm going to talk. That's pretty much what goes on in this council with this man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name and address, please.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. 2 weeks ago, this body was given legal advice by our law director stating that citizens need to be sworn in lest they be giving untruthful or incorrect information. So at this time, I'd like to be sworn in. Mr. Peters, I'd like to be sworn in before
We're not swearing you in, Chuck. This is public speaks.
That was a legal opinion you get from your law director 2
No,
weeks
it
ago.
wasn't a legal opinion, sir. You may
All
continue.
right. Well, in response to Mr. Fox's remarks of 2 weeks ago, I'd like to just proffer these remarks. Were North Canton voters sworn in prior to voting down issue 12 back on November 6th? Were North Canton voters sworn in prior to voting for each and every one of you when you were elected? This has got to end. The law director is not an elected official. He is not representing the citizens. You are, each and every one of you. And every week you let this gentleman interject all through the meetings, his commentary, his opinions. I've seen probably over a half a dozen law directors over a good number of years. We'd go weeks, months. The only time we heard from the law director is when he read the title for the legislation. Nothing beyond that. Yes, Mr. Fox has an opinion, like all of us. But he should not be given a bully pulpit up here to cast aspersions and attack citizens. And I'm asking for you to end this once and for all. Unless we need a legal opinion from Mr. Fox, we should not hear from him. For some reason, somebody made the decision to delegate the reading the title of legislation to the clerk. I don't think that was a good decision. But at any rate, given that, we should not be hearing from Mr. Fox. We all know he is directing everything that goes on out here. He tells you what to think, when to think, and how to think. And you guys just float along and let him be your mouthpiece. We do not need an unofficial, self-appointed pit bull up here attacking citizens. And I, for one, have had enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Anyone else wishing to address council?
Good evening, Melanie J. Roll, 308 Porter Street, Northwest. Recently, the North Canton newsletter was distributed to everyone, I assume, in this community. And Mr. Peters, you had some information about Safe Built, and then there was also an additional story about Safe Built. I would like to inquire how this is going to proceed. Perhaps the administration or someone on council has the insight. I understand how it will work with the permits and all of those things, and probably with developers. What my core issue is, and has been for some time, is how will the nuisance department work? As I've said multiple times, Mr. Johnson does an excellent job, always responds. When I talked to the man that I think Van Gundy, maybe is his name, he said that they could do whatever the city asked them to do. So I'm asking you, is there a plan for this company to canvass the city on a regular basis and look for nuisance violations? We all know it's complaint-driven at this time. I would like to see something more proactive and have the company that has the expertise to canvass and make these citations and follow up. I don't think that's too much to ask. If somebody could inform me how that's going to proceed, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. And if it's okay with you, I'll ask Patrick in reports to address that. Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay. I'm sorry. Anybody else wishing to address council? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to new business. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 70-18?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7. An ordinance amending Chapter 553, Weeds, Trees, and Grass of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton, specifically amending Section 553.01, obstructions on lawn strips and lawn debris and street gutters, by adding subsection C as described below.
Thank you, Chairman. Move on.
Thank you. Just by way of background, we have actually two sections of our codified ordinances that deal with obstructions on sidewalks. We have 52106, which is a duty to keep sidewalks clean. It references snow in particular, or any other nuisance. 52106 is drawn directly from the Ohio Revised Code. Then we have a second section of our codified ordinance, 55301, which is being amended tonight, that talks about obstructions on lawn strips and lawn debris and where it should be kept from the lawn strip and ultimately from the street. In effect, what we're doing tonight by amending 55301 is declaring that weeds and grass that grow over the sidewalks is a nuisance just like snow, in effect. And this is not a one-off. If you look at both sections of our codified ordinances, the intent is to keep the sidewalks clear and clear of hazards for pedestrians. And I think we know, as the administration has indicated, that we've had a couple of situations where grass has simply become a hazard on certain stretches of sidewalk. So this is an effort to remedy that issue by clarifying what in effect is a nuisance. Any other questions or comments?
If I may, sir, I just wanted to point out that we're going a little further here as well from the sidewalks, in that we're including curbs, gutters, and driveways, because I think we've seen those spots where you have a cracked driveway and the weeds are growing up and through the driveway, and so this is essentially where you have your concrete and curbs and gutters, your driveway, and your sidewalk.
Didn't we talk about this? We were gonna bring that back to committee?
Well, we're going to bring, there's a second part of that, and that is whether we want to regulate what is in the strip. And we haven't addressed that yet. So this is the first part of it, and we'll bring to answer your question, Mark, we'll bring that back for further discussion. I think there was some disagreement or how we wanted to handle it, whether if we were going to go in that route, whether we as the city would go out and clean it up and plant it, or whether we would impose that responsibility on the property owner. I think that's an issue that needs to be worked out. But this one gets us at least launched into that weed control encroached sidewalk issue.
Yeah, the next phase is going to be a little more lively debate.
I suspect so.
You pointed out a good point to the last meeting, that because of the Main Street widening program, lawn strips are effectively removed from Main Street, and the curb, what would be the lawn strip is pavement.
Yep.
Or brick.
Brick. Yes, sir.
Some of that's in disrepair.
Yes.
Yes.
I guess following up on public speaks portion of the meeting, so obviously, and maybe our minister can address this, if someone was in violation, this would be a public nuisance, I'd imagine.
That is correct.
So this would be something we'd want our new building department / group that we've hired to enforce.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Are we happy?
Yeah.
May I have a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number 70-2018?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you. On to old business. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, second reading, ordinance number 63-18?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7. An ordinance amending ordinance number 50,003, zoning ordinance of the city of North Canton to change the zoning of parcels abutting North Main Street and South Main Street from Orion Street Northwest and northeast of Portage Street Northwest to the Main Street Business District, MTGs, as more fully described in chapters 1121, 1123, 1125, 1127, and 1137 of the North Canton's codified ordinances, and accepting those certain parcels clearly illustrated in the zoning districts map attached hereto and incorporated herein, which are not harmonious with the intent of the MSB.
Thank you. Chairwoman Keesley.
Yes, that was all a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but we are creating a new district, and the boundaries are stated there in the title. Any other questions is in the actual ordinance. We discussed it. Any questions, concerns? I motion we adopt.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, second reading, ordinance number 69-18?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7. An ordinance to make appropriations for certain expenses and other expenditures of the City of North Canton, Ohio for the period beginning January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2019, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you. Chairwoman Warren.
We talked about this at the last meeting we had, this is our second reading, and it was just cleaning up things, so moving monies around. Or do you want to say anything else? Last time I kind of gave all the
Yeah, and last time we went over, there were a couple little changes for the 19 budget that we had found as we reviewed it, but we don't have anything further, and I haven't had anything brought by council members or administration or department heads, so I think we're pretty much ready to move forward with the 19 budget, whether it's on second or third reading.
Okay.
Good.
Question, Marcia?
No, she said whether it's on the second or third reading, I didn't know if she wanted us to pass it tonight.
No, we still had time, right?
Right.
So we're still
Yeah.
good.
We
You
had
got one
discussed
more
that,
Are you okay with that?
yeah.
Give
we had
folks another
discussed
2 weeks. If there's something they see in the budget they want to question, it gives them 2 weeks to.
I liked it last time when you showed us that, it just again showed how thorough you were and how people were going through it, and I think you talked about one person in particular, he had kind of looked at the numbers and there were some changes, and just the responsibility you're giving other people as well, and how clean the budget it really is, so, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, is there a motion and a second to adopt second reading?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, next up is reports, but we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to try something new. We're going to start with reports on this side over here.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Wait a minute.
Get your notes together.
We gotta talk about this.
What I want to accomplish here is twofold. A lot of times, we give our reports, then, you know, the engineer, mayor, administrator, whoever, finance director will come up with something, and then
Yeah,
it'll create
questions.
more dialogue. This way, admin, all department heads gives their report. If something catches our eye or our ear, we can write it down and then directly question you about it.
Very good idea.
In our reports. Secondly, what I'd like to do, in response to what Chuck and Larry have said, I would like the elected representatives, okay, to have the last bite at the apple to respond to any public comments that you guys have. Okay, I hear you, and we're gonna try it this way. I'm gonna ask council members who wants to respond to any comments that were made in the public speaks portion, and I will refer to them at the end. Okay? And if there's multiple, if I know my alphabet well enough, we'll go in alphabetical order, whatever the case may be. But it'll at least give you guys the satisfaction that your elected representatives are gonna be the one answering to you, okay?
It's a great idea.
Okay, now, in a couple things. Before we go here, I don't have any prepared comments. A lot of moving parts, a lot of things are being said, and I'm looking at a lot of notes here. I'll address the elephant, again, once in the room, that I understand there's animosity between folks in the audience and our law director. We feel our law director, from a technical standpoint, does a very good job. You may think he goes into the policy side more than you would like. Maybe true, but it's a free country, freedom of speech, okay? I looked at the comments that he made, and he didn't make a direct accusation. All he did was stated a fact. If you're not under oath, there's no expectations of being truthful, okay? He wasn't calling you a liar. I didn't hear it that way. Even reading the words, I didn't read it that way. You know, talked to Daryl today, and we both kind of agreed, okay, that he wasn't calling you a liar. I think where the frustration lies is that, how do I say this? It's a very highly sensitive atmosphere in here on Monday Night Public Speaks, okay? And it goes way back. We all know where it goes to. And I understand that. I get it. But the bottom line is here, we're up here doing the city's business the best we can. And I think we're all pretty honorable, okay? You guys are honorable as well. We don't think you're a bunch of liars and thieves. And I would expect you wouldn't think that about us. You know us outside this arena here. We're all family men and women, okay? Just trying to do what's right. But what's frustrating is, for example, Chuck, in your in your comments last week, you mentioned Lenny Siegel. And you made comment, and I'm looking at it right now, but you made no direct quotation, but you used him in the last 2 times he's been here as almost for lack of better terms, a hammer to hammer home your point. But I'm looking at an article that he wrote back in 2016 regarding vapor intrusion, and this is what caught me here. If implemented properly, the technical response to the vapor intrusion threat, particularly in new structures, is protective, reliable, and cost-effective. Okay? And if I take that out of context, that would support my argument to you if I wanted to come back and attack you. I took it out of context. There's other portions in this article, and I read the article, it's pretty interesting. I'm glad you mentioned it. But what this tells me is the land that was donated, yeah, maybe Mr. Lichtner is trying to, get back into the good graces. Probably. But we still have a job to do across the street. It needs to be done, okay? Is it gonna come with challenges? Sure. And a lot of the information in here, I think, pretty much goes point by point how to effectively handle those challenges in a cost-effective manner. So, I think the bottom line is we're all on the same side. I think we can all agree about that. We all want what's good for this community, okay? I live on the edge of this plume. I have 2 properties. My children are living there. I have a basement. This concerns me. This concerns me if the safety center project ever goes forward to have our firemen and our first responders over there. I'm concerned for their safety, their mothers and fathers and brothers and daughters. We all care about the same thing. We need to stop the fighting. We can agree to disagree, and we are going to argue. This isn't the last argument we're going to have. It can get heated, but let's not make it personal. He's not a bad guy. He doesn't hate you. He doesn't hate Larry. He doesn't dislike you. I think a couple meetings ago, he even mentioned a couple things that he thought were endearing. So, that's just my 2 cents, and, we're not going to move this forward and do what we want to do if we're fighting each other. Everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction. If we can agree on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so with reports, we're going to start with Deputy Director Farina.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Hold on. Let me stop there. Let me start with our council clerk.
Oh, no report.
That was easy. All right, Deputy Director Farina.
Just 2 quick items. Just on the technical side of things, the phase 2 of the police phone project is going to be starting. I'm hoping to get that rolling by the end of the year. That's just transitioning the PD into the voice over internet protocol for VoIP phones. On a more social fun, just a reminder, this Sunday is the community sing and tree lighting, and that's going to be right out here in Bitzer Park, and we're actually going to be closing off the streets. So it'll be
how this goes. Well, it was the bubble project. We got what was left in the kitty, which was like $226,000. But the good news is we get first dibs on any funding that's returned from other projects. And a local, one of the other municipalities has one they're just finishing up now, and they've already got it on email to myself, the regional planning, that they're going to be turning back in like $350,000. So that and 226 puts us 575-ish, plus any others that come back. So we may not get the fully 40, but we'll be over 50%, which was what I thought I'd do next year anyway, resubmit at 50/50.
That's great.
So that money is available after July 1st. So yeah, we get around 575,000 plus any other communities return for East Hill, 200 for Apple Grove, plus 800 grand that we got a couple weeks ago.
Outstanding.
So,
Yeah, no doubt.
Good job, Rob.
Nice job.
and lastly, kind of go along with the tree lighting. If you look out the window there, you see we got our 6 lights on West Maple this afternoon, so they're on.
Good work.
Awesome.
Nice, good job.
Thank you, Rob. Is that it?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we will have this Sunday, December 2nd, the Christmas tree lighting, as Kathy had mentioned. And so that's always a real nice event, and Mark going to be helping with tree decorations.
Oh, wow.
We're coordinating that, right, this year?
Yeah,
Or you can work, we're going to work with Kathy on that. We'll get the crew.
yeah, the tree decorations will happen this Thursday. Okay, my sister Becky Taylor does the ribbon,
Yeah.
and she usually holds things up, so she's gonna start it earlier at 9. So she'll have a guy coming out there. So anybody who wants to help decorate the tree, 10:30 to 11 is when we're gonna really start putting the bulbs on.
Okay.
Okay, and what else did I have? I had something else on that. Yeah, and as far as the lighting of the tree, we know one of the people lighting the tree this year will be someone from the library. Right.
As soon as we get word, yeah. So usually what we do is, we try to get people that represent service to the community. And why do we pick 2 people? Because historically, we've always had 2, we had this box that was made which has 2 switches. So that 2 people can flip the switch at the same time to light the tree. And so we've always, it's just become a tradition to invite people that have served the community in one way, shape, or form, and so that's what we're going to do this Sunday. And then the next item that we have is, we have to, according to the charter, we have to have our annual organizational meeting. And so this is the one meeting that the mayor's office calls the meeting, starts the meeting off. I get to sit in the council president's chair, and fortunately not very long. And then, you elect your council president, and then once that position's appointed, then you go on and appoint the vice president, right? I think you name the committees. And so I think it will be a very, very lengthy meeting of probably maybe 10 minutes or so. And I don't think there's any other items on the agenda. So it was mentioned if we could hold it at 5 o'clock, because since it's really going to be more of just a function, a required function, and then that way we won't have all the employees having to stay around. Yeah. Yeah, December 3rd, Monday, December 3rd. So there will not be a council or a committee meeting on Monday, December 3rd. Instead, we will have the organizational meeting at 5 p.m. And there will be no other items on the agenda other than to appoint the council president and the council vice president. Okay. And then also, Council President Peters, very good speech about, we all have the same mission. It's just sometimes we all have different methods as to how we're going to go about it. But we all want a nice, safe community, and we want to serve the people in the community the best way that we can, the most cost-efficient and the best way possible. And really, this is a refinement process, because it's funny, when I first started here, I had so many grand ideas, but then you realize that some of the ideas that I thought were so fantastic, I
after it would go through the process, it didn't quite come out, the way that I had intended. And usually, it was good that it didn't, because we serve to refine each other. And that's why I appreciate all those that are present here today and that speak up for the public speaks, because it helps us make better decisions. And also I want to say to Brandis, last week, after the last meeting, we had a chance to talk, and you had sent me an email, which I didn't respond to, and it was not intentional. It was, because of course I see you here every Monday night, and I know I saw that Doug Lane was responding to you, and we had a chance to talk about it. But I wanted to let you know that I appreciate your input, and just like our council president said, we could have differing opinions. Oftentimes we do, and oftentimes we agree, and that's just with all of our residents. So I appreciate your input. But but when I was not, my intention of not responding was not to be disrespectful in any way, because I do value your opinion just as I do everybody's. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Mayor. Patrick?
I don't have a report. I just will respond to Melanie's inquiry regarding the nuisance department. The nuisance department is a separate department from the building department. Nothing has changed in that department at this time. Mark Johnson is still working that department. He reports to Kathy Farina or reports direct to me. He still works 29 hours a week on those things. That's not to say that I'm not motivated to make sure that we are providing a very cost-effective and responsive approach to nuisances, and that's something that we are working on. We tried something last summer that didn't exactly work, I felt, the best way, so we're open to looking at new ways. But as of this time, Mark is still responding very well to all the things that we get. I've had a couple that I've turned into him myself of things that I see when I drive around the city, and he gets out there and posts, and a lot of that has to do with the leaves. We had a unusual dropping of leaves, kind of late, and a number of contractors were raking the leaves out into the street, and that's a no-no. So, but Mark was very good at going out and taking care of that. So it's not always just in the summertime that we think of that we have a nuisance problem. It's kind of goes year round, and I'm certain that once the leaves are done, we'll be dealing with snow or some other issue, but there's no change at this time. That's it.
There's one other, since Patrick reminded me on the leaf collection. So we've had a few people that had called because they were upset with the timing of when we were recycling the leaves. And so usually the decision that is made, the administration makes the decision, usually the administrator with the service director, as far as when is the best time to pick up the leaves, because we have, like a 6-week period. And it always seems that, it varies from one year to the next, and it depends on the weather. So we had a really warm season, and that caused the leaves to stay on the trees a lot longer than they normally have been. And then we had that storm come through, and it seemed like the majority of the leaves just landed all within the, a 2 or 3 day period. So it did create a lot of volume, and it was right towards the end of when we had the collection. So even as of, I think, the last week, the 15th, November 15th, we had a lot of people that still had a whole lot of leaves, including myself, in my yard. And, so I think what we're going to do is next year, I've never had people complain that we were collecting the leaves too early, or that we were collecting them too late. Because usually if people set them out at the curb and they have to wait a week, that seems to work okay. So what we'll do is we'll just keep this in mind, and we were thinking about the last week up until Thanksgiving, and that's just based on input that I was getting from other residents. Mr. Tripp, I think that's probably a good idea. So we're thinking going up until right before Thanksgiving. The one year, we probably could have had it in the second week of December, too. So it just varies, but that's what we're gonna do. And then there was another question about why the city doesn't rake them to the street. Some communities do that, and that is it's a very risky endeavor, and that is because if you don't get the leaves up out of the curb, and it rains and it snows, then you have storm sewer backup galore. So that has been a problem. It is easier for the residents, but it makes it, it's very difficult to pick up with the number of trees that we have along the, in the city, and to get them up without, because once it rains and freezes, you cannot suck them up with the vacuum. Then you're out there with pitchforks, and it's just a tough thing. So a lot of the municipalities that have it, some wish that they didn't have it, and so that's, at this point, why we're not doing that. Maybe if they come up with new equipment at some point in the future, that would make it a little bit more efficient, but it takes a long time, even when you have one of the largest vacuums, to suck up those leaves. So we'll extend the period next year for the leaves until the last week before Thanksgiving. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor. Director of Finance, Laura?
I don't have a report, but I wanted to follow up on the comments about Safe Built to further answer Melanie's question. If you remember the contract that was approved with Safe Built, there was a line item in there for nuisance services. Those come at an hourly rate. So the main contract with Safe Built is based on a percentage of permit fees that are charged back to the permit holder. But that nuisance service, like Patrick said, it's a separate kind of item than building department services. So it's charged on an hour, per hour basis. That's an option that administration could exercise if they wish, but financially, that's not what we planned on for 2019. We could do that because, when we talked about the 19 budget, we had some money in there for the salaries of the employees of the building department. We also had money in there for Safe Built because we weren't sure at that point, firmly which way we were gonna go. So if later on in the year administration wishes to exercise that option, either to supplement what they're already doing with Mr. Johnson, or replace that function with Safe Built, then council could choose to move some of those dollars into the professional services line and do that. That would be a choice down the road.
Okay. Thank you, Director of Law. Tim?
Yes, sir. Former council member, former mayor, former council president, current council member Revolt had stated at a prior meeting that this council's best decisions are made after a vigorous debate. And I don't know that there are many more important decisions that this council is going to have to make in the near future other than the gifting of this property. And we absolutely don't want to get that wrong. Going either way, whether accepting or denying, we do not want to get that wrong. And so when we have experts in their field that come and report to city officials and to the public at a public meeting and give their analysis based on research and data that's put together by nationwide experts on contaminated property, and when that information is contradicted by someone that purports to be a layman, then there is that challenge that where does this opinion come from? If it's simply an internalization, it's your gut feeling that it must be wrong, then we want to understand that. But if it's hard facts challenging these decisions, then we want that too, because we absolutely don't want to be wrong. So if you're challenged in this decision, it's not to say that you're not being truthful. It's to seek out, where does your data come from? Where do you have this information that we're going to make a wrong decision, because we want to research that as well. We'll accept nearly anything in making this decision. So that's where the challenge comes from. And if you're upset that your opinion is challenged, this perhaps is not the forum for you, because that's what this is for. That's what these comments are for. You're welcome to challenge her. You're welcome to your opinions, but you're not welcome to your own facts. And if they're outside of the realm of the expert opinions that we're trying to rely on in making this decision, then yes, we welcome those things, but we're looking for the basis of those things. So if you have that information, please provide it on this and any of the other issues that council is going to decide. It is welcomed, but when it's simply, I feel this way, okay, we'll accept it that way, but we're trying to make some really challenging decisions, and we want it to be based off the most current, reliable information possible, and so that supports that vigorous debate. So we welcome you to participate in this, and we don't wish to harm any feelings. I've heard it time and again, you know, this isn't personal, it's business. And well, it's the city's business, and we want to get it right. And so if you have information and want to challenge, we welcome that. And if I've offended you with that, it's not my intent. My intent is to provide the council and the city officials with the most up-to-date, current, logical, fact-based information to make their decisions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Tim. Good comments. Before I open it up to council, just, you know, in the interest of full disclosure, to kind of follow up what Tim said, on a personal level, you know, some of my most ardent critics are sitting in this room right now. And in the beginning, I took it very personally. I did. It affected me physically, mentally too. It wasn't until, and I won't get into that, but I figured it out. And I realized that it wasn't personal, that you guys wanted the same thing I did, but I was taking it personal. And so I fell victim to that as well. And I get that, you know, and my most ardent critic is right there, Larry, and he reached out to me via phone last week, you know, and I welcome that. Actually, it was a good conversation.
First time in 2 years, not to interrupt.
No, I agree.
But then I told you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to interrupt.
No, I get it, but that's where it is. First time in 2 years we've talked one-on-one on the phone. It probably has been longer, and I appreciate that, and I like to keep that, I like to continue that. Keeps us on our toes. So, okay, is there anyone else on council that wants to respond to any of the comments during public speaks? Don, save you for last.
Is it time?
No, we're going to save you for last.
Okay.
We'll start with Doug. Member Foltz.
Thank you. Listen, I welcome public speaks. Everyone knows when Jeff's not here, I run a tighter meeting. And it's because of decorum, professionalism. That's all I expect from both sides. So if someone took it personal, it works both ways. Sometimes people are up here on the edge as far as the comments, and it almost becomes personal, and it should never become personal. It should be issue driven. And all I ask anybody in this meeting is to be professional, have public decorum, because, you know, we represent our community both in the audience and as elected officials and administrators. And people see this. It's on the internet. We know students come up here and we sign their forms, that they get to see government, you know, in action. And I just like to be proud of that, whether I'm for or against a certain issue. That's my bottom line. And as far as the comments made, I welcome our law director Wayne in, but he does not speak for me individually or anybody here on council. We all have our own thoughts and minds, and that's what makes this a very professional and I think very good council. We're not afraid to say what we mean and mean what we say when it counts.
And listen, we're probably in agreement 95% of the time. It doesn't mean that 5% can't be discussed and everybody have valid points, and that's what makes our community a better community because of those outcomes, in my opinion. So that's what I have to say on that issue. As far as the leaves, listen, Sam Brinton called me. He seems to, reach out to me, and maybe Daryl, he brought up Ambler. I think it's Westfield, if I have the street wrong. He's concerned with the leaves, with the bus drivers in that area. That's a tight street. So I don't know what the response would be, Mayor, Administrator, as far as what we do with the leaves when they are in the streets in those areas. Is there a way to get a street sweeper out there? What can we do? We just can't let it go. That we plow it up eventually when we do snow plowing, but I think it's something that we should probably, if you get time, just to send somebody out and look at that and see what our response could be there. And I haven't seen it. I just got the call tonight, so I haven't been out there to look at that.
I think Sam's mistaken because most of the leaves in that area end up in my yard.
He seemed to think from the cemetery, so I don't know if that's exactly what They do that on purpose.
Yeah, they do. Find my yard.
Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, to finish with Melanie's comments, listen, we've been a proponent of nuisance inspections. I think I would ask the administration, this council, to support us spending more money on it. I'd like to see inspections done throughout the city. It is mostly complaint driven. We have one person, he does an excellent job. This isn't anything new, the Mayor, that you haven't heard from me before. So if it's not built in the budget, let's put it in the budget. I'd like to see some other additional work besides from Mark. I'm not saying Mark should be part of this process. If that's the decision, that's fine. He's done a great job, but let's add to it. Let's consciously go out and look at all the streets and drive by and see what's out there. The cars parked in the grass, gutters that need taken care of, painting. Listen, those are vital concerns in your neighborhoods. We want these to look good. And whether it's a rental or a private owned property with somebody living in it, as a family that owns it, they still should have to follow the codes. And let's figure out a way, if they can't do it, to help in that process, if there's a senior member there or a widow or whatever. But I think we have to take charge in writing up the violations. We shouldn't pass these sidewalk violation codes if we're not going to enforce them. It's the same with anything else on the property. I've seen structures with holes in the roofs, structures that should be torn down. I know it's a lengthy process sometimes, but we got to find a way to streamline that. And if there's more inspections done, or there's a better way with safe built, and fine. Let's look to do it, to add to it, to make sure we keep the integrity of our neighborhood together. It's important. We're in a vital situation here in North Canton. We have great schools and government. We want to make sure the housing stays that way or gets better, in my opinion. So,
and also,
thank you.
Just if I may, just to clarify, the residents are prohibited from putting their leaves in the street, so they should not break or blow leaves in the street. So that's prohibited. But for the leaves that are naturally fall in the street sweeper does pick those up.
Okay.
But it's not, we're not set up
No,
to.
we're not set up to do it.
Ambler's a unique situation over there.
It is unique there. It's a tough street, Ambler and West Woodard. Thank you.
Yeah, Member Serrano.
A couple things. As far as public speaks is concerned, I wish more people would come. I mean, we're here representing people. We're here to hear the people. And I know we have the normal people that come, and I'm happy they're here. I wish more people would come, and so we were informed. We don't know everything. I'd like to hear more things about what, and on the other side of it, the more people that did come up would understand both sides of things. It's funny how you say something to someone, they always ask a question, see you at a restaurant, well, what about this? And once you tell them about, oh, I didn't know that, and they completely understand at that point. So I wish we did have more folks that would come up and understand, on both sides of things. But I welcome the public speaks people. Keep doing that. It keeps everybody in sharpness. A couple things. The decorations are mostly up for the city, looking good. There's a few things we still need to work on. The wreaths are up. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Normally, my family puts up the wreaths Christmas morning, but very close to that. My wife took a look at those and said, "You're not putting those things up. Those are really ugly." So she put all new wreaths on, all new bows on them. She was real particular about that. That's what a fourth grade teacher does to her family. Then she makes them work on it a little bit harder. So those are up now, and I think we have a couple more things that we're working on, Pat, and a meeting that we set up with some of the lighting and everything on Main Street. I think it's really going to be kind of cool this year because we're going to open up the street in itself. We're not going to worry about traffic or anything like that right next to where all these kids are, and the lines and everything should be handled a lot better than last year. So I hope to see everybody there. As far as Tim is concerned, Tim, you have one of the hardest jobs that there is in this city. I think you do a terrific job. I think it's a tough balance that you have to weigh between playing defense for us and playing offense for us. And I think you do a really good job of doing that. So keep doing that. We make sure that we're all respectful and to understand each other. But when it comes down to it, your job is to protect the city and the citizens behind the city. And so you do a really good job. Better than any law director I've ever seen here. I haven't been here that long. But I've never seen one communicate and stand up and not, in the past we had law directors that would handle it in a different way. Let's put it that way. And so I'm happy with what you're doing. I hope you continue to do that. And we're moving in a good direction. So let's keep doing that.
Thank you. Member Volt.
That's it.
Patrick, just a quick question before we get to move on to a comment. In terms of nuisances, how does the average citizen know where to go to file a nuisance complaint? Do they go to our website?
One call does it all.
Yes. How does that?
One call does it all. Is that correct? Kathy? One call.
There's an option that says if you'd like to speak to our nuisance officer.
Okay.
Press,
One call
goes right
does
to
it all.
Okay, perfect.
It does.
Just one call. You call in.
499-8223. We have one city phone number.
That's
You just call it and get to whatever department you want.
1-800-CALL-PAT.
And so the nuisance department
One
is there and
call does
available,
it
and if it ends up in a different department, it'll get routed to the right department.
Great. Okay.
Email is also an option.
All right. Perfect. Chuck, a little bit ago, talked about resetting. And I hope when we conclude our meeting tonight, we all take that to heart. Many of you have heard me say that what exists on the internet lives forever. We don't know what's going to happen across the street. There may be a new investor at some point. May not be. Maybe Mr. Lichter, maybe somebody else. Who knows? And there are going to be lots of other opportunities with some of the surrounding real estate for development. In my experience in economic development, one of the things that investors seek is certainty for their investment. They want to know before they spend money, who am I going to deal with and how do they think? How do they ascertain that? Well, they attend the council meetings. They get on the internet and Google us. So as we get up here and we debate these issues, I think it's incumbent upon us to remember that we are on the cusp, all of us, on the cusp of doing potentially some fairly phenomenal things regarding economic development. The pieces and parts are slowly falling into place. Let's not let our zest for combat compromise our ability to attract investment. Like everybody else up here, I value opinion. Mrs. Revolt would tell you I probably don't value hers because I'm stubborn.
No,
After 40 years, she hasn't managed to dominate my thinking. But the reality is that we do need opinion. And I apologize for igniting this little dispute last week. My point was just to say that it's really important as we sort this stuff out that we try to establish a common set of facts, that we make sure that we gather those facts and those become the basis of our opinion, whether we reject them as facts or not. But it's important that we do that, and that perhaps goes back to my education in history, where we were taught to evaluate sources, to go out and identify the sources, check the footnotes, you know. Is the book reputable? How was it reviewed by other historians? All that stuff matters. And I guess in a sort of broad and general way, I was attempting to set the tone as we move, as Mr. Fox has indicated, as we move toward evaluating this acquisition of property. It's really important that we be smart about all this stuff, not only for the property itself, but for the future of our economic development here in this community. I think many of you know that I return phone calls. I'm happy to listen. I have broad tolerance for dissenting opinion. I think that's a healthy part of this debate. But we've got to have one common rule if we reset, and that is we can disagree without being disagreeable. And as I told the esteemed Mr. Olson today, in a long and extensive conversation, I've come to the conclusion late in my life that your worst critic's your best friend. That you really want that kind of discussion. But what we've got to do is make sure it doesn't get personal, we try to get to the facts, and we're not disagreeable. And again, it's not only for the deliberations in this body, but it's for our ability to attract outside investment. You know, and I'll just be really brief. I was over in a city in western Ohio when I was Jobs Ohio, and there was a great story. They couldn't figure out who in the hell was in the back of the council chamber one Monday night. Well, here it was a team from a company that was looking to establish an investment, a factory in the town. And they were there simply to watch that council operate. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week, they had breakfast and lunch in the town to talk to the townspeople about the city council. What do you think of them? They didn't get the investment. So it's a stark and harsh reminder that we really have to be on our best behavior. And again, we can overstate it. I support Chuck. Let's reset this thing. Let's go forward. Let's try to make sure that if no offense was intended, none's taken, and move forward from tonight. We've got a big year ahead of us.
I agree.
We got a lot of stuff cooking. I had poor Pat on the phone today for about 45 minutes, browbeating him about the 18 things that I want done. And only 18. Well, I mean, look, somebody only had 10 commandments. So at any rate, that's kind of my sermonette for the night. And again, I apologize if I ignited something that it was not intended. It was just a reminder to let's be rational and reasoned and think hard about what we're doing and try to have the best facts possible when we make a decision. It's all the intent was. I'm done.
Very good. Member Keesley.
For all that, I have no report. I very much
well
agree
said.
with you, Jeff, yes, and very well said, Darrell.
Well said.
Yes, let's move forward, for sure.
All right. Member Warren.
I agree, move forward. But I do want to thank Rob, that East Hill grant, that you threw that in. That was great. I know we've talked about that street and some different things that could happen. There's a lot of people potentially that could be affected with some of that water that we have back off of Knoll and some different areas. So maybe we can look at that. And I know we were working with a few residents on that. I noticed the decorations too, and they looked really pretty, and on the phone and said, hey, look at this looks great. Tim, I've always appreciated your thoroughness, and I continue to look forward to that. And yes, let's move forward. So thank you.
And the best for last. Member Fox.
You got an hour?
Sure did.
I'm not making it short after all that. Yeah, so I wasn't at the meeting last week, but I watched the video, and I heard all the reports, and I even made a comment to a couple of you guys. I thought the reports were good. I can see how, you could take it personal. And this is the thing about politics is, we're all passionate that we want to accomplish, we want to move the needle forward, we want to hit the reset button. And, so even though sometimes we get to the same goal a different way, we always have to be kind and respectful of each other's opinion, because we do all care, or we wouldn't be doing this. So I'm thankful for all of you. I'm thankful for all the citizens. I'm thankful for the opinions and the freedoms to be able to say what we want to say. But we do it in the spirit of kindness, and we really do want the best for the city. Tim, you know, I always look at the legal and the practical side of things with you. You're always legal. Sometimes, you know, we look at the practical side as, you know, citizens, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. But, you know, we know where your heart is. We know you really care. As far as, like, Stu Lichtner, so, yeah, there's been some things that were wrong, things that didn't happen. But I look at the backside of the building that we generate $500,000 to $600,000 worth of revenue, even though the front he dropped the ball there. So by him making the donation of the brownfield, or whatever you want to call it, it's still a donation. I mean, I'm not donating it, and I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to get it, because that's going to help us do the safety service building for less money. Now, with the standard of the safety, the EPA is going to require that we make sure that the standards are met according to how many hours are in that building. I would like to see a show of hands of how many people in this room have done a radon test in their home. A lot of people, did anybody do a radon test?
Right here.
Okay, so that's the leading that's the leading cancer causing of lung cancer, right? So all you need is 4 picocaries. That's the EPA standard. Under 4 picocaries is acceptable, over 4 picocaries is unacceptable. Now, when I talk to people, because this is what I do for a living, a lot of people say, oh yeah, I have one of those machines in my house. And I go, what kind of machine? Like a radon machine. No, it's a carbon monoxide detector. So a lot of people don't even really know what it is. So this is a standard natural occurring cause under the earth that I would bet the majority of the houses that I sell, and I sell a lot, 70% of them have elevated levels of radon. So the first thing I would do is check your house for radon, for starters. And it's an easy system. For about $975, you can mitigate it. So on a higher level, when you look at the brownfield, which when I was at the meeting, it seemed like the surrounding areas of the building were becoming better than what it was initially. Is that correct? So when I heard the reports, I thought it was well done. But again, I get what, you know, it's our opinions and concerns, because we are concerned about safety. So the safety or unsafety building would be, we want to make sure it meets the standard. So I say, thank you, Mr. Stuart Lichtner, and whoever's involved that was nice enough to donate the gift. I think the city should take the gift and run. And I think that with the Main Street Business District that's happening right now as we speak, it's been in place since '03, and now we're finally activating it. So that's going to go hand in hand with the Hoover District. And I believe in my heart, within the next year, you're going to see movement over at the Hoover District, which is going to create that synergy we've been looking for. So I anticipate that things are going to move in a positive direction. I'm pleased and thankful to be on the team of people that are making it happen. That's my report.
Outstanding.
Amen.
One more point. In that context, could we have on the next agenda, or the next serviceable agenda, the consideration of outdoor dining? We
Yes.
talked about that, and I think we need to get that up for discussion, because if we want to have that ready for summer, we need to get cranking on it.
I saw an email. Mary Beth, did you get that email?
That was from me.
Oh, that was from you.
Yeah, we need
Is that
to
to
have.
me?
Yeah, to you and her.
Oh, okay.
Patrick, but we need to get that, going.
And just so you know, you had asked me to do some research on that part, and indeed I did. I looked all over across the state for those that mention outdoor dining, and what I found is that we have, it's probably tied with the most restrictive. You know, some go a little bit more, some match us, but most others offer much more restriction, or much less restriction on outdoor dining.
Yeah. Okay.
Work on that.
Perfect. So
All
if
right.
we can get that, we need to get to the planning commission.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
All right, lastly, December, January meeting schedule. As the mayor mentioned earlier, this evening, we have our organizational meeting, Monday, December 3rd, 5 p.m. There will be no committee of the whole meeting that night. December 10th will be our a public hearing, 6:30 p.m., followed by our last regular council meeting before holiday break. We will return Monday, Monday, January 14th, for a regular council meeting. And that concludes this agenda. The fun's not over. Stick around. We got a special committee of the whole meeting after this. Motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned. I'd like to call to order the special committee of the whole meeting, Monday, November 26, 2018 at 8:12 p.m. Clerk, please call the roll.
Surratt.
Here.
Folds.
Here.
Fontaine.
Here?
Kiesling.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Revolt.
Here.
And Waring.
Here.
7 present, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. First up, personnel and safety. We are doing a slight rewrite of the employee handbook, revising the equal employment opportunity and the ADA aspect of that, along with Ohio Civil Rights Act, anti-retaliation policy. Tim has worked very hard on this. I'm going to turn this over to him. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. I've worked with Director of Finance Brown and the Deputy Administrator on this policy and in further efforts of continuing to update our employee manual. It was clear that our ADA policy, our complaint procedure, the no retaliation portions that we had were out of date. So this is the most current from the legal research tool, Westlaw, and so we have a package there, and we're able to get the most up-to-date information in these areas. So that's what we've put together and modeled it toward North Canton, and asked that we go ahead and implement this and get it out to the employees and add it to our handbook.
All right. And these are very important additions to our employee handbook, hence the emergency aspect. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll move that to the...
Well, I got one.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
Patrick.
So I know Tim had sent me an email last week asking for comment, and I was unable to get back with him due to the short week and working on a couple other projects and having family in from out of state for the holiday, but I was looking to make sure that, that in the one section that deals with the complaint procedure, that it kind of follows, more correspondingly to the way that we have restructured administration. So as it relates to if you're subjected to any conduct that you believe violates this policy, you must promptly contact your direct supervisor, department head, director of law, deputy director of admin, or the director of admin. I'd like to add in there the deputy director of finance in that stream. And the reason is that we restructured administration here, that when we are interviewing a prospective candidate, the HR function that relates to that comes from administration. We handle that. Once the employee is hired, though, all future issues dealing with human resources flow through to the Deputy Director of Finance, and that's something that we restructured in agreement with the Finance Department 8 months ago. So I would like to see that that we make sure that that person by title is in there, because that's a direction that I think that the city is going to continue to work on.
Yeah, I would agree. Laura, do you want to weigh in on that?
I would agree with that. We had made that choice with council's approval, like Patrick said, about 8 months ago. So I think that position being included would be important.
Okay, Tim.
And to go to that, what I've read in this area as it applies to the complaint procedure is that you certainly want to have a number of representatives available to have that information and be able to take that in, because you your complaint may be with, say, a line of succession in one area, and if we don't open this area up, the person may feel that even though we do have the anti-retaliation policy, if we only had administration available or your supervisor to be able to bring your complaint, you may be reluctant to do that because you feel that it's going to perhaps come back to harm you or another individual. So this opens that line up to kind of both sides, if you will. We have the council side that includes the director of finance, the deputy director, and the law director, as well as the administrative side that has the deputy director, the director of administration, as well as their first line supervisor. So there's many avenues that someone could bring a complaint if they believe that it followed a chain of authority.
Okay, good stuff.
So we're adding it or not?
We are.
Okay.
I have a question, and this probably goes to both Tim and Pat. Under the complaint procedure, we use the word or. We've established a sort of chain, you can go to any place.
Right.
My question is, would it be better to have and? In other words, you just paper the complaint. So that way, there's no likelihood this thing's going to get swept under the rug. You're going to have, everybody's going to know about it in the chain of command. What do you think?
I would disagree, I guess. Speaking out on that is that, once you require and, I think it goes to Tim's point, the law director's point about, where their comfort level is in reporting something.
Okay.
And when you mandate that you're going to do that, you may violate the spirit of that.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right, more the merrier. Moving on to the next council meeting, emergency clause. Everyone in favor? Good? Yep. Okay. And it concludes personnel and safety, finance and property. Chairwoman Warren.
Okay. Laura, I'm going to let you and Pat, I figured when we take money from the government, there's some different things that we have to adhere to. So just going to talk about that account and how we're going to do all the monies that we're going to be doing for this great new project we're going to have.
Well, I think we're going to tip our hat to the law director for doing some research on this, but yes, there are requirements that the state mandates that you agree to regarding terms and conditions for accepting money. So we are, with Deputy Director's lead, we've been applying for an advance of that money as we are entitled to under the rules. We're entitled to a third of those funds to be advanced. $250,000 is what we've asked for. And we had to submit a number of documents to meet those requirements. Tim was gracious enough to review those documents and found that there is a council requirement, although we passed in council the idea of pursuing this project. We now have to enter into a recreation conservation project pass-through agreement. So it's basically how the money is going to go from one entity to the other, and the council has to accept that if you want to obviously do this project. So that's why we had put this forward and Tim had done the research on it.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Good.
All right. No surprises?
Yeah, and the reason that there's an emergency clause, they told us last week, by the way, we need this back by, and you're seeing it for the first time, December 6th, I believe was the date, so that's why we had to have a quick turnaround.
Which puts us in a situation
That's tight.
Yeah, we won't be.
now that you're changing December 3rd
We may have to make an emergency to do that.
to just a committee of, or to a organizational.
Yeah, we will need,
It has to be done by the December 6th.
well, they need to have it in hand, enacted into law, signed by the mayor before December 6th.
So
So can we do it right after?
can we do it December 3rd?
Right after?
Do it right after your organizational. That's the only one it really needs to get through.
Yeah.
We had no insight. It just came in the mail. last week, and they said, by the way,
And it's just
to meet,
I'd like to have a public speak something.
to meet our committee to get this passed on, you need to have it back to us and acted as law by December 6th.
Well, and this is to accept $750,000.
250 of it, right?
Well,
Well,
straight
it's-
away, but
it's
it's
a-
a 750 grand.
It's accepting the 750 grand.
Right, 735 technically.
Technically, they hold a percentage fee.
Well, it's all just procedural too. I mean, this is what you do when you take in grants. So,
Let's take it, that'd be great.
Here's what we'll do. I'm gonna need a motion in a second to add a special council meeting following the organizational meeting to include a public speaks portion to pass this on emergency. Yes. So that's motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Folds,
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Revolt.
Yes.
Waring.
yes.
And Sweattick.
Yes.
7 yes to hold a special council meeting December 3rd following the organizational meeting.
Directly following. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Back to you, Chairman.
Okay.
You're still up.
So that's number A. So number B, this is what we do every single year, and it's just us authorizing the mayor to provide a contract between the city of North Canton and the Director of Public Defender's Office, providing legal counsel to someone who may be indigent in our community.
And if I might just add as color commentary, I want to make sure that we're give Councilman Revolt a little credit here, but we instituted, way back when, a calendar of contracts that were expiring. So this was our initiative in administration in reaching out to them, saying, hey, where's our contract? We think it's coming up for renewal. And, thanks for reminding us. So I wanted to publicly say that.
Thanks for being proactive. All right, if there are no questions, we can move that forward. And lastly, these were supplemental funds that were largely due to oil and gas expenses. Correct, Laura? If you want to add anything else, the prices stayed pretty high this year, and we need to add a little more money to it.
That's correct. Fuel prices were up pretty much all year. I've seen they've dropped in about the
Today.
past week.
Today.
But up until this point, all over the country and
Yeah.
here as well, they've been high, so we didn't have quite enough budgeted, so we're adding for fuel expenses and then a few other miscellaneous line items that weren't quite hefty enough in the 18 budget that we're cleaning up before year end.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll move that forward.
Okay, and before I ask for a motion to adjourn, just to review, our special council meeting next Monday is going to only deal with A, the grant. Okay?
And include a public speaks.
And include the public speaks.
Is that,
Pardon me?
they're all on the same agenda, right? Or we have?
Separate agenda. We have a You can't have it on the organization.
Just check.
That concludes. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? We're adjourned.